What if I told you that a 21-year-old pregnant woman was accused of shoplifting alcohol, and less than 30 seconds later, a police officer's bullet went through her windshield and ended 2 lives? No chase, no weapon, no warning shot, just one pull of a trigger. Her name was Kiya Young. She was 7 months pregnant. She already had 2 young sons waiting at home. And that night, she would never return to them. The entire encounter was caught on camera. Every step, every second, every decision. A jury watched that video. Prosecutors said the shooting was unnecessary. The defense said the officer was afraid for his life. And in the end, the officer walked free. This is the truth behind how a pregnant black woman died, over an accusation that was never proven violent. Because when the cameras stop rolling, and the verdict is read, there is one question that refuses to disappear. Was this justice? Or was this another life the system decided not to protect? Stay with us, because once you see what the cameras captured, you will never look at police bodycam footage the same way again.
Welcome to Black HerTruth.
On the evening of August 24, 2023, 21-year-old Kiya Monet Young was in the parking lot of a Kroger supermarket in Blendon Township, a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. She was pregnant, several months along, and the mother of 2 young sons. Local reporting and hospital records show she and her unborn child later died after the shooting. That night, store staff told police that a woman had taken bottles of alcohol from the store without paying. Officers approached Kiya while she was sitting in a 4-door Lexus parked in a handicap space outside the store. Video and witness accounts show 2 officers at the vehicle, one near the driver's side door and one standing in front of the car. Officers repeatedly told her to get out of the vehicle. Kiya told the officers she had not stolen anything. Body camera video and surveillance footage later released by local media show a tense few seconds. Kiya put on her turn signal and the car began to roll forward slowly. The officer who was standing in front of the vehicle, later identified in court filings as Officer Connor Grubb, drew his handgun and aimed at the car. As the vehicle made contact with the officer and moved forward, the officer fired one shot through the windshield. Kiya was struck and the vehicle then swerved and came to a stop. An emergency room doctor who happened to be nearby provided first aid until paramedics arrived. Kiya and the unborn baby were later pronounced dead at the hospital. When the video footage was finally released, it changed the conversation. The case against Officer Connor Grubb did not rest on rumors or witness memory alone, it rested on cameras. Police body camera video, combined with Kroger's fixed surveillance footage, created a clear timeline that prosecutors, defense attorneys, journalists, and the public all reviewed. What the cameras show is now central to the criminal case. The video begins with 2 Blendon Township police officers approaching Kiya Young's parked car in the Kroger parking lot. One officer stands near the driver's side door, speaking to her through the open window. The second officer positions himself directly in front of the vehicle, close enough that the hood and bumper are only inches from his legs. This positioning is visible both on bodycam footage and the store's surveillance video, which shows the scene from a higher angle. Audio from the body camera captures officers repeatedly telling Kiya to get out of the car. Kiya responds that she did not steal anything and can be heard questioning why she is being stopped. Her tone, according to reporters who reviewed the footage, is defensive but not shouting. She remains seated with the door closed. The videos do not show her holding a weapon, and police later confirmed she was unarmed. The critical seconds follow. The body camera footage shows Kiya turning the steering wheel slightly and activating the turn signal. The car begins to move forward slowly. Surveillance footage shows the officer in front of the vehicle stepping backward as the car rolls. Prosecutors later argued that the officer could have moved out of the way. Defense attorneys argued that the officer believed he was about to be run over. Both interpretations rely on the same video frames. As the car continues to move, Officer Grubb raises his handgun and aims directly at the windshield. In less than a second, he fires one shot. The bullet travels through the glass and strikes Kiya. The car continues forward briefly, then veers and comes to a stop after hitting another parked vehicle. The sound of the gunshot is clear on bodycam audio. This moment, the single trigger pull, is the center of the entire case. Immediately after the shooting, the video captures confusion and panic. Officers shout for medical help. A nearby emergency room physician, who happened to be in the parking lot, runs to assist and begins providing aid until paramedics arrive. These actions were later confirmed by police statements and hospital sources and were visible in the extended footage reviewed by reporters. When prosecutors presented the video evidence to a grand jury, they emphasized the positioning of the officer, the slow speed of the vehicle, and the fact that only one shot was fired. The prosecution argued that deadly force was unnecessary and that the officer placed himself in danger by standing directly in front of the car. The defense countered that the video shows a real-time decision made under perceived threat. Both sides agree on one thing: the video does not lie, it simply does not speak for itself. It must be interpreted. Media outlets that analyzed the footage frame by frame noted that the car's movement was gradual, not sudden. Several legal analysts interviewed by national networks explained that this detail would matter in court, because Ohio law allows deadly force only when an officer reasonably believes there is an immediate threat of death or serious bodily harm. Whether that standard was met is now a legal question, not a speculation. In the days after the August 24, 2023 shooting, medical and official documents confirmed what many in Columbus already feared: Kiya was pregnant at the time she was shot. The Franklin County Coroner's Office and multiple news reports verified that she was 7 months pregnant with a daughter who was due in November 2023. The autopsy report, reviewed and summarized by local media outlets, listed the cause of death as a single gunshot wound that pierced her torso after the officer fired through the windshield of her car. That single bullet was the event that led to her death and that of her unborn baby. The medical examiner documented that both Kiya and the fetus died from the same injury, confirming that the unborn child did not survive. This was noted in official autopsy reporting and confirmed by local journalists citing the coroner's records. Family members, attorneys, and news organizations repeatedly pointed out that she was unarmed and not carrying any weapon at the time of the shooting. There is no credible law enforcement record indicating any weapon or immediate danger presented by Kiya aside from the vehicle movement captured on video. The fact of her pregnancy, and its tragic end, became central to how the public understood the severity of this case. Many activists and civil rights advocates emphasized that a 21-year-old mother with 2 young sons and another baby on the way was killed in a moment that might have been avoidable. These details, based on official autopsy confirmation and family accounts shared through reporters, underlined the human cost that extended beyond Kiya herself. Because the bullet passed through her body and struck vital organs, the coroner ruled it the primary cause of death for both Kiya and her unborn daughter, whose heartbeat had been detected earlier in pregnancy reports. There were no other injuries listed that contributed to her death. The autopsy indicated that the firearm injury was sufficient to cause immediate loss of life. Reporters covering the autopsy outcomes reiterated this point when they released the medical details to the public. The medical evidence, from the coroner's findings to the public release of the pregnancy confirmation, shaped the legal and emotional tone of this case. It influenced prosecutors' decisions to initially include charges related to the death of her unborn child, though those were later modified during trial, and it deeply affected how the young family and broader community spoke about what happened. The autopsy stood as a clinical, documented truth in a case full of public dispute and interpretation. After the shooting of Kiya in August 2023, reactions from her family and the wider community were immediate and emotional. Her relatives described the loss as devastating, especially because Kiya was unarmed and pregnant when she was shot. Her grandmother, father, and siblings said the video footage, once released, left them with deep anger, frustration, and grief. They said the killing was avoidable and a gross misuse of power and authority. Shortly after the body camera and surveillance video were made public, family members held private vigils. In Columbus, friends and relatives gathered to release balloons and light candles that spelled out "R.I.P. Kiya," honoring her life and marking the loss of both her and her unborn daughter. Her grandmother told reporters that Kiya had been excited to have a baby girl and that her death left a huge void for her two young sons, ages 6 and 3. Legal advocates and civil rights supporters also spoke out. At press conferences with the family's attorney, Sean Walton, the family called for charges against the officer who shot her and for broader changes to police practices. Walton emphasized that video evidence showed the shooting was unnecessary given the situation, a suspected offense of shoplifting, and that the family wanted justice and accountability. Community reactions were not limited to Kiya's immediate circle. Local activists, neighbors, and supporters gathered at the Kroger parking lot where the shooting occurred and held demonstrations demanding transparency and accountability from the police department. Some groups highlighted concerns about police use of force, especially involving black women and people of color, and called for better training and policies to prevent similar deaths in the future. In the months following the shooting, the family continued to urge officials to act. They criticized what they saw as delays by authorities and questioned decisions by the police department. Kiya's grandmother said in interviews that the family felt the system valued power over people's lives and that police should be held accountable when their actions lead to death. When a grand jury later indicted Officer Connor Grubb in 2024, charging him with murder and other counts in connection with Kiya's death, the family viewed it as a step toward justice. Supporters and legal observers described the indictment as a rare example of an officer being charged after a fatal shooting, an indication of how strong the evidence and public pressure had been. After months of investigation and heightened public interest, the criminal trial of Blendon Township Police Officer Connor Grubb began on November 5, 2025 in Franklin County Common Pleas Court in Columbus, Ohio. Grubb was charged in connection with the August 24, 2023 fatal shooting of Kiya, a 21-year-old pregnant woman. The formal charges included murder, involuntary manslaughter, and felonious assault related to the deaths of Kiya and her unborn child. At arraignment in August 2024, Grubb pleaded not guilty to all counts. In opening statements, prosecutors focused on the central question the jury would face: was Officer Grubb's use of deadly force reasonable under Ohio law? The prosecutor argued that the body camera video and surveillance footage show that Young was not an instant danger to Grubb or others when he shot her through the windshield of her car. Prosecutors stressed that officers have a responsibility to de-escalate situations when possible and that the evidence showed Young was moving slowly, not accelerating rapidly toward the officer. The prosecution also noted that the charge of murder applies when a defendant intentionally causes the death of another without lawful justification. They acknowledged the evidence that Young may have been suspected of shoplifting alcohol, but emphasized that a suspected misdemeanor does not legally justify killing someone, especially when other options, including retreat or repositioning, were available. In contrast, the defense framed the encounter as a split-second decision made under perceived threat. Defense attorneys told jurors that Young's car, a roughly 3,500-pound vehicle, became a deadly weapon once it moved toward Grubb, who was standing directly in its path. The defense argued that Grubb had a reasonable belief that he faced imminent danger of serious harm when the vehicle made contact with his legs and began to lift him off the ground, and that his response was justified under Ohio's standards for police use of force. A use of force expert, an accident reconstructionist, and even Grubb's partner, the second officer on the scene, testified. Jurors also heard from a policy expert on how officers are trained to respond to vehicles in motion. Notably, Grubb himself did not testify. His side of the story was introduced through a written statement read by a special agent from the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation. Mid-trial, on November 18, 2025, the judge dismissed 4 counts from the indictment that related specifically to the death of Young's unborn child. The judge agreed with defense arguments that prosecutors had not proven Grubb knew she was pregnant at the time he fired the shot, a legal detail required for those specific counts to stand. After roughly 2 weeks of testimony, jurors heard closing arguments that reiterated the core debate. Prosecutors urged the jury to consider whether deadly force was truly necessary. The evidence shows that she was not running over the officer with her vehicle, they said, and that Grubb's decision was not reasonable under the circumstances. The defense insisted Grubb acted to protect himself, calling the situation not complicated. On November 21, 2025, after deliberating, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty on all remaining charges against Officer Connor Grubb. The jury's decision meant that the prosecution did not convince jurors beyond a reasonable doubt that the officer's actions were criminally unjustified. The courtroom reaction was emotional. Young's grandmother collapsed into sobs and shouted, "It's not right. This is not right," when the verdict was read. An attorney for the Young family called the outcome an American tragedy and said the family intended to pursue a civil lawsuit against the police township and its chief. Legally, the verdict underscores how criminal cases involving police use of force hinge on whether jurors believe an officer's fear of imminent danger was objectively reasonable, a high bar prosecutors must overcome. Although Grubb faced up to life in prison if convicted, the jury's decision reaffirmed that in this case, they did not find sufficient evidence to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. After the criminal trial ended with a not guilty verdict, the Kiya Young case did not end. Legally, the verdict closed the door on criminal punishment for Officer Connor Grubb, but it did not end accountability efforts. Almost immediately after the acquittal in November 2025, attorneys for Kiya's family confirmed plans to move forward with a civil lawsuit against Blendon Township, the police department, and individuals involved. Unlike criminal trials, civil cases use a lower legal standard, preponderance of the evidence, not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and focus on wrongful death and violations of civil rights rather than criminal guilt. Civil rights attorneys for the family stated publicly that the lawsuit would argue that Kiya Young's constitutional rights were violated and that police tactics used during a suspected shoplifting call were unnecessary and dangerous. They emphasized that Kiya was unarmed, pregnant, and accused of a non-violent offense when deadly force was used. These statements were made during press briefings covered by local and national media in the days following the verdict. Nationally, the case became part of a larger conversation about police use of force, especially in encounters involving vehicles. Legal analysts explained that courts have repeatedly struggled with cases where officers stand in front of moving cars, situations that departments themselves often warn against during training. Commentators noted that while juries may accept officers' claims of fear, these encounters raise serious policy questions about officer positioning and escalation. The acquittal also renewed public discussion about how difficult it is to convict police officers in criminal court. Former prosecutors interviewed by PBS and Reuters explained that jurors are instructed to give officers wide discretion when they believe they are in danger. This legal reality, they said, often means that even tragic deaths may not result in criminal convictions, especially when video evidence can be interpreted in more than one way. For Kiya Young's family, the case has always been about more than legal outcomes. Family members have repeatedly said they want Kiya remembered as a mother, daughter, and young woman with a future, not just as a headline. They have spoken publicly about her 2 surviving sons, who will grow up without their mother, and about the unborn daughter who never had the chance to be born. These statements were shared through interviews with the Associated Press and local Columbus media. Community advocates say Kiya Young's name now joins a list of black women whose deaths at the hands of police have drawn national attention, even though their stories often receive less coverage than similar cases involving whites. Activists argue that her case highlights how black women, including pregnant women, are vulnerable during police encounters and deserve greater public visibility and protection. As of now, Officer Connor Grubb faces no criminal penalties, but the civil case remains pending, and the financial and policy consequences for the township could still be significant. Past civil cases involving police shootings in Ohio and across the United States have resulted in multi-million-dollar settlements and changes to department training policies, even when officers were acquitted criminally. This is where the story stands today. Kiya Young was a 21-year-old pregnant mother, unarmed, shot once through a windshield after a shoplifting call. A jury found the officer not guilty under criminal law. Her family continues to seek justice through civil court. And the video of her final moments remains a permanent record, not only of what happened in a Kroger parking lot, but of a system still struggling to balance authority, fear, and human life. The law may have spoken, but the questions remain, and Kiya Young's name will not be forgotten. This story reminds us that power without restraint can cost innocent lives. Kiya Young was not judged by a court before she was judged by a gun. When fear replaces patience and authority replaces humanity, the consequences are permanent. Justice is not only about verdicts, it is about whether every life is treated as valuable before it is lost. If we want safer communities, we must demand accountability, better training, and compassion, especially when lives, and unborn lives, are at stake. What do you think justice should have looked like? Thank you for watching. If you found this story impactful and want to help keep these kinds of stories from being forgotten, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, stay with us.